It's time now for Uncancelled. The occasion of Jesus' second coming, referred to in the Bible as the Day of the Lord, continues to be a source of great fascination and speculation among believers. Well, in a new book called The High Sign, best-selling author David S Heeren reveals 200 prophetic images and 24 dramatic events mentioned throughout the Bible that support his unique interpretation of the Bible's end-time prophecy. So, is a second coming seriously on the cards? David S Heeren joins me now live from Leesburg in Florida. Hi, David.
Hi, David. Hi.
David, you are a well-published author, 17 tomes currently in circulation. Why did you write this one?
It happened 15 years ago. I had written sports up until that time. I'm reading in the Bible, the book of Isaiah. I get to chapter 6, verse 8, and Isaiah hears them talking. Here's God talking. And God is saying, almost to himself, I guess, well, who will go for us? Whom shall we send? And Isaiah says, well, here am I, send me. And they did. And then the prophecies of Isaiah came next. Well, I had the same or similar experience. I prayed the same prayer. I thought about it. I said, well, why don't I pray that prayer? I said, well, here am I, Lord, send me. And the next day after that, I started to understand a lot of, in fact, most of the prophecies that I was reading in the book of Isaiah. And then from there, I started to write about it, the things that I thought were important.
And why is it important to Christians, the notion of a second coming?
Well, it's in the Bible. Jesus had a sermon. It's in Matthew chapter 24 and 25. And it was all about his second coming. And the sign leading that will be recognizable, that Christians will be able to say, well, there's the sign, and he's coming back. So it's a two-part thing. Yes, he is coming back if we can believe what he said, and we are to be ready for it. And one of the ways that we get ready for it is to watch for the sign, whatever it is. Now, there's a lot of differences of opinion among Christians as to what the sign will actually be.
And obviously your book looks at a lot of evidence about what those prophetic images and signs are. So what are the key clues that he's coming back?
He said in his sermon about a half a dozen things. He said that there would be false prophets. He said that there would be a period of tribulation. And then he said, but I'm going to shorten that period. And then after that, there's indication that there will be some other things that will happen. And then before, we don't know how much before his actual return, a sign will appear in the sky at some. And so I tried to identify what that sign might be, because there's a lot of possibilities. It might be an eclipse of some kind, lunar, solar, both together. It could be an asteroid. It could be a comet. It could be a meteorite shower. Anyway, I went through the whole thing about what are the possibilities. And then I looked at the scriptures and said, well, which one fits all of this prophecy? There's 80,000 words of prophecy in the Bible about the end time. And a lot of it mentions the day of the Lord, which is the day when Jesus is going to return. So I had a lot of work to do there.
Any prophecies in the Bible about what we're going through at the moment? Could the pandemic be a factor? Global warming, climate change, war?
Yes, all of those things. Jesus mentioned, if you read those, well, Matthew 24 is great, and Luke 21. Basically, it's just a different version of the same story with certain different additions or subtractions, but it's basically the same thing. And the thing that he emphasized the most was that there is going to be a period of tribulation. And out of this fact, because he mentioned so much about it, a lot of Christians have gotten frightened. Well, we don't want to go through tribulation. And so this new dogma, it's only a couple hundred years old, has arisen. I don't know how it is over there, but in the United States, probably about 50% of the Christians are what they call themselves pre-tribbers. that means that they want to go to heaven before the tribulation starts because they don't want to go through the tribulation. Well, that's wishful thinking. Whether it's going to happen that way or not, I don't think the Bible gives the evidence that it will. I think Christians need to be optimistic and to say, well, the Lord's got control of this. He's God and he has control. We don't have to worry about it. And he said that. Jesus said that. He said, I am going to shorten the tribulation. Trust me. Do not be afraid. He even said, don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. But a lot of Christians are worried about it. They really are.
Yes, I mean, you always have to worry when a politician says, trust me, or everything's going to be fine. But I guess maybe Jesus is somebody that's got a bit more credibility for Christians at least. David, what's the possible timeline? When might he come back? Will I witness it in my lifetime? Will you witness it in yours?
You might. I don't think I will. But another thing that Jesus said was, you are not going to know exactly when. There will be hints along the way, and we're seeing some of the hints. The pandemic is one, and the false prophecies. There's a lot of false prophets out there. But as to when it actually is going to happen, he said, you're not going to know it. He said, I don't even know it. Jesus said, I don't even know when I'm coming back.
But what's
the only one who knows that is my heavenly Father.
But what's the point in him coming back if we don't know he's back?
Well, the scripture also says every eye will see him, meaning not only the Christians but the unbelievers. So, yes, it will be very visible. The entire event will be very visible. There's indication in his talk in the book of Matthew that there will be a light that will stretch across the sky from horizon to horizon, and that is one of the main reasons why I think the sign of his return will be a comet, because a comet is the only thing that I know of. It's got a tail millions of miles long, and it can produce that kind of effect if it gets close to a planet of being stripped all the way across the sky.
Now, David, assuming that Jesus is one of the good guys, what will he do when he returns?
Well, it will take us to heaven. Whatever else he is going to do,
David.
I don't. Excuse me?
I'm not sure I'm ready for ascent to heaven just yet. Perhaps he could just come back, sort out flooding, end a few wars, get rid of a few diseases.
Well, you asked me what he will do. And he did very clearly state in the scriptures that the dead will be raised and be raised up, and that there will be others that will be left behind who are not Christians. So that's one of the things he's going to do. As to whatever else, he didn't say at all. He did say that there would be a judgment, and that is not necessarily just a bad thing. He said that even Christians will face an interview. Okay, it won't be, well, should I let you in or not? But it will be, let's go over a few things now, because I think all of us have a few things in our lives to go over.
Like a sort of feedback session with your boss at the end of the month.
Exactly.
David,
yes, exactly.
When this second coming happens, will that be it? Is it just a second time and there are no further comebacks? Or could it be like Cher, where he comes back all the time?
No, he made it clear that there would be only two. We've had one where he was resurrected, and then he was actually seen by hundreds of people rising from the surface of the planet and going up. And so when he comes down, that will be the second time. And according to the Bible, that will be it. Eternity will begin at that point, and there will be some who will be up there, some who will be down here. And I don't know the whole picture, but there will be a distinction between groups at that point.
Now, of course, David, on this program, on this channel, we have the greatest respect for every single religious denomination, whether you're Jewish, a Quaker, Christian, and I'm sure that's your view as well. But in relation to the Jesus story, I mean, some will be watching and wondering whether this is wishful thinking on your part, and some will think, David, that you've lost the plot.
Well, I'm just laying it out the way I believe and the way I think the Bible. I've studied it pretty carefully in the Bible and the way Jesus laid it out, and the prophets. Prophet Isaiah in his own book talked about the day of the Lord, which, according to Peter, will be the day of Jesus' return. So the book of Isaiah even has prophecies about it. It's difficult to get them all together and to say, well, this is that and that is this, and to say, but you can get a big picture. You can get a big picture. And the center of the big picture is that Jesus has said that he will come back, and that we who believe in him, that he died for our sins, will be going up. That is part of the picture that it comes out of the Bible, of studying the Bible. Now, I know there's a lot of other different opinions in different religious faiths, and I respect them. But I've done my studying, and I've come to some conclusions that I think are correct.
David, before we let you go, you are speaking to us live from Florida in the United States. How Christian is America these days?
Not very. Both, I'll just say Billy Graham. Both he and D. James Kennedy, probably the two best-known evangelists from this country. Kennedy, with his evangelism explosion, which is in every nation of the world. Graham, who personally visited almost every nation of the world to share the gospel. And both of them said that less than half of the people attending churches, and they were talking about the United States. I don't know how it is elsewhere. Less than half of the people in the churches are actually Christians. And Graham did worse than, I shouldn't say worse. He went one further. He said 3% of the Christians are fulfilling their potential as believers, and the rest are just kind of slopping along. Now that's pretty devastating commentary about the status of Christianity in the United States. It really is.
Yes, and what are your thoughts about the future of the pandemic? You're in Florida, which saw a lifting of restrictions many months ago, and it would appear that the governor was vindicated in that decision. Cases are up, but hospitalizations and tragic deaths have not spiked significantly. So I guess Florida is a good place to be in a pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's about the same in Florida as it is in California, in Florida as it is in New York. The point being that those rigid restrictions weren't necessary. It's not that, and that the economic status, because of that, people still have their jobs, et cetera, is better in Florida than it is, well, in Texas too, Florida, Texas, and some of the other states, than it is in states like Illinois, New York, and California, where the restrictions were so great that people could hardly move. They weren't even allowed to go to church in California, but the actual number of cases per age group, the age group in California is lower than it is in Florida, and we know that the elderly like me have more chance of getting the pandemic, so it balances out. And I've heard the scientific explanations for it, and I think the problem is that we've been going along the wrong trail because we've been making assumptions that were wrong. And when I say we, I mean the people who in the medical industry in the United States, and I guess elsewhere too.
Yes.
They've been making wrong assumptions that, for instance, the masks would help prevent the disease, and it doesn't prevent the disease from spreading. Or if we close everything down, people they still get the disease. In that respect, I would say, yes, the governor did the right thing by saying, no, we're not going to shut everything down.
And finally, David, how important is it, going back to your book, The High Sign, how important is it that the US president still believes in God?
Well, I think all of those Christians I was talking to, that Graham and Kennedy were referring to, they'd all say that they believe in God. But just saying I believe in God, that doesn't mean a thing, really.
Because it's hard, David.
All different kinds of gods.
Of course, it's very difficult, isn't it, for anyone to become president, male or female, if they don't go to church and if they don't reference God. You know, if you had a politician that said there is no God, they'd never get to the White House, would they?
Well, I think that most of us knew that this current president didn't believe in God. He didn't admit it, but I think we had studied his background enough to know that he did not believe in God, and he got there. So, you know, whether it was legitimate or whether they stole votes, that's another issue. But he got there, and he does not. Definitely now we know that he does not believe in God. And
does that matter to the American people?
I think it matters to some. It matters to me because it's a question then of, well, will the president conform to biblical standards of morality? And this one apparently will not and has not. So I would say we've got a real bad spot because Christianity is in trouble in the United States, and the governmental standards are terrible right now. The government is being run into the ground right now. So we're in a bad way.
In what way, David, before we let you go, is Joe Biden behaving in an unchristian way?
Well, I really don't want to get into details because
sure.
No, I can't. People wouldn't believe it anyway. But I would like to close it optimistically because in spite of more than half the Christians being not really Christians, and in spite of the fact that the government is in bad hands, which I think is true, we have reason to be optimistic because we have a God who loves us. He's told us that he loves us. And Jesus has encouraged us to trust him and to not be afraid. So I want to end it optimistically and say that I think that's the most important thing now. And going into details about the things that our president has done, that's for somebody else to do, not me.
Well, David, your book is winning rave reviews. I've got to say, it's a fascinating and provocative read. I believe it's your 17th tome and it's a bestseller. So thank you so much for telling us all about it. The book is called The High Sign and it's by David S Heeren and it's out now. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.